The main dramatic character category at the Art Anime Awards 2022 recognizes the most compelling and emotionally charged characters in anime. These are the characters who have left a lasting impact on viewers with their depth and ability to evoke strong emotions. Join us as we celebrate the unforgettable protagonists and antagonists who have taken us on a journey through their struggles and triumphs, leaving us on the edge of our seats and begging for more. Here are your nominees for Best Dramatic Character of 2022.
世のこと守っちゃってね。
牛よ。俺
お母さんの作ったセーラー服嫌なの？そんなこと言ってるんじゃない。違うのに。
やっぱお前にはこれがないとな。
あいや
あ
無駄しいとは思わないか。人にはそれぞれあった道というものがある。それを逸脱しても幸せにはなれないということだろうな。
傷に触ってないか？もっと強くていいぞず。
やってよかったな。
まあな、疲れたけどな。
よかった。
だけど人が見てますよ、目立つ行動は。なんで？なんでって私たちリコリスですよ。制服着てない時はリコリスじゃありません。
こうするのが正解ということだ。シャスールのパラディンが来てるだって。
見るに耐えないし聞くに耐えませんよ。料金を払っていないと言っても忍耐にも限度が。
And your jury winner for Best Dramatic Character is Yang Wenli from Legend of the Galactic Heroes. And your public winner for Best Dramatic Character is Kageyama Shigeo from Mob Psycho 100.
Joining me for main dramatic is none other than Ember, a very long time awards guest. Hello, welcome back.
Hi, glad to be back.
And from the jury is Taeon Coming Storm 97. Hello.
It's nice to be here.
I'm pretty sure every year I make some kind of bad joke about not knowing whether or not to call you Taehan or Storm.
Yeah, well,
You
It's a
prefer
bit-
one over the other, right?
I do prefer just Storm because my name really is the oncoming Storm. So whenever someone says Tehan, it makes me think they're saying the on.
Okay, Taehan. Anyway, I've said this a lot throughout the segments, but I mean, looking at these winners, it's not entirely surprising. You have this kind of critical darling that is Legend of the Galactic Heroes. I mean, it's a meme at this point that everyone has it at like a 10 out of 10, so it makes sense that its main character would draw this sort of praise. And then like the latest season of Mob Psycho, it's like his whole arc, like it's the culmination of everything that's been building up. So that's not a surprise either. What do you guys think of these rankings?
Well, I haven't seen the remake of Legend of the Galactic Heroes, but I've seen about a quarter of the original series, slowly working my way through, and just based on that, if it's any compares, if it holds any water there, I would say Yang definitely deserves this win. He's easily one of the strongest characters in the series, just from a tactical standpoint, from a moral standpoint, just the issues that his character goes through. I'm not surprised at all that he took this win here.
But now, why Yang instead of someone like, say, like Reinhardt? I mean, this is me just like not knowing the series at all. But considering that it's a series that's so often praised, you would think that so many of its characters are good and would belong here, right? So why Yang specifically? Do you think?
Again, I've only seen about a quarter of the series, but I guess I would frame it more from how would I phrase this? Reinhardt's plot is a little bit more revenge-ish driven, again based on my vague knowledge of the first series, whereas Yang is just more so like just a guy trying to get by and trying to do good things in the best way that he can in a not good structure that he's a part of.
Was that something you
Yeah,
guys voted for,
so
Storm?
yeah. On that topic, we did thoroughly discuss the options of both Yang Wenli and Reinhard, but unfortunately, due to the nomination requirements of the awards, we had to pick one, and so both our discussion and the general feeling for the eligible content for the awards, being the most recent third and fourth seasons of the remake, meant that the topics covered, like the Fortress versus Fortress arc and Operation Ragnarok, and the various civil unrest which is explored through Yang's character, were the particular highlights for us. And so that was one of the reasons we chose Yang over Reinhardt in this instance.
I mean, just in general, I always found the character categories just so much more difficult to really get into as opposed to say genres, because think about it, it's already hard enough dealing with like all these shows that come out year after year that always seem to somehow increase in number. And then when you think about it, every show has like, at least 5 up to like 20 like potential characters that could be really good. What goes into choosing, say like Made in Abyss, right? So Made in Abyss has our main 3 that we all know and love, and then this new season basically introduced a whole bunch of new characters that are also essentially main characters themselves. What was kind of the discussion going around that, and why did you ultimately land on Fapida?
So I don't think there really was any competition. For both Reg and Rika, the continuing storylines as they delved deeper into the Abyss were, well, compelling as usual, but they really felt like they took a sideline to the depth that Fapita explores in her character, and this idea of a predetermined sort of destiny, and the ideas of revenge, and trying to figure out who she is in her own character. Those were pretty key elements in us for our discussion, and it was, well, yeah, she was quite a standout in comparison to the rest, ranking third as we see.
Do you also think that Fapida was a pretty easy choice from all the options, Ember?
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah. I would honestly, I'm very happy to see Fapita that far up on the list, because she's far and away probably one of my favorite characters of the year. Just like Storm said, this predetermined revenge plot, and also just the way that everything just kind of unravels towards the end and just falls into chaos, in the way that she has to deal with that and coming to terms with that, and the trauma of her heritage and her past is just, she's just so incredible to me.
I want to try a little bit of an experiment here, because Ember, you have not seen the latest season of Mob Psycho, right?
I have not. I have seen the first 2, but not the latest season.
So judging from the first 2, what direction would you have liked them to take Mob? Because this is the final season. There's no more to adapt. So what do you think is the ultimate culmination of Mob's arc?
Right. Well, I've seen the trailer for season 3, so I know it involves, I forgot her name, the girl he has a crush on, I believe. So I believe it would probably involve her, and the way Mob views himself perhaps as a person worthy of attention or love or something like that. And probably, I would hope that it would eventually settle on him just having the self-confidence to be who he is.
I mean, Storm, I think that's pretty spot on, don't you think?
Well, I don't want to get into any spoilers, but I feel like Ember has got a pretty good grasp on Mob's character as a whole.
What do you think made the public choose him?
Well, like Ember mentions, this final culmination of his arc is um, not only is it really action-packed, and the animation elements of the show especially are really great to just sit there and enjoy. And the massive spectacle which this season unveils is absolutely worth the watch.
Now, while the mob as a winner still placed like relatively okay on the jury side, I mean, like seventh, but it's like not last. Meanwhile, Aaron is second on the public side and last on the jury side. I think Aaron this season is pretty controversial. People have kind of like a hate him or love him approach. What side? I mean, I guess you guys landed on hate, but can you talk about your discussion regarding Aaron Yeager?
So me personally, I do value uh, the inclusion of a character in the show's runtime strongly. Obviously, with our transition to dramatic character this year instead of main and supporting characters, we had hoped to move away from this idea of being the focus on the show. Nonetheless, Eren is a focus still in Attack on Titan, but as the feeling of the series just getting drawn out further and further sort of wears down on viewers, it doesn't do his story elements a great service. The content he does have this season is really great in regards to exploring his motivations for the last part of the final season.
Final season part 1.2-3.
Yeah, so it is some great further exposition on his motivations, but that sadly falls sort of outside of what we as a jury are able to judge this year, for part 2 being the only eligible season.
Ember, what do you think about Aaron's sudden, I don't know if it's sudden, but kind of shift in role almost? He kind of comes, I mean, you know, he won Best Antagonist at the Crunchyroll Awards, right?
Right.
What do you feel about that?
I'm familiar with that whole debacle. but now, personally, I capped out on Attack on Titan sometime early in season 3, but I'm vaguely familiar with how the series has played out from there, and just the shift towards a very gray area in terms of morality. I can definitely see him being a very talked about character and a very popular character with depending on how you view his actions. So, but again, I'm not too familiar with the specifics, so I can't speak to that, but I do know there is probably a lot to talk about. I just don't know if it's in this particular part, like Storm said, that there is enough to talk about.
Now, when we think of a dramatic character, we often think about some kind of like moody, sad sort of character or storyline, right? I mean, you've got a bunch in this list that kind of embody that, such as like Aaron. It's a super sad boy this season. David Martinez, of course. But then you have someone like Chisato, who is pretty Genki and pretty energetic most of the time. What do you feel about Licorice's inclusion in this category?
I actually really enjoyed Chisato's character quite a bit. It's a very tried and true character arc of the uber pacifist trying to maintain that uber not necessarily pacifist, but uber like not kill everyone in a show where everyone is killing everyone kind of attitude. Sure. It's very shonen in a way to a certain degree, and I found For as tropey as it was, it was a very fun kind of tropey, and I think it was explored in enough depth to make the character fun and engaging. So I can definitely see, I definitely appreciate her being on this list, but I also recognize why the jury put her fairly low on the list, because it's not super like complex or in depth, but I still found it very fun to follow nonetheless.
Well, Storm, I find it kind of weird because it's complicated, right? So, Licorice as like a plot line, that kind of thing, people are like not so into just because it's kind of very basic, right? But people often say that the characters of Chisato and Takina basically just saved the show. Like their interaction is just so fun to watch. So, is the reason she's kind of low on the jury side due to being maybe constrained by kind of a weak surrounding element, or is it the character itself? Or like her, because I know she goes through her own dramatic arc that's kind of like, depending on how you feel about it. Would you mind talking about that?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, the surrounding elements for the show don't exactly do the cast of the show the best service. But our very necessitation for the inclusion of Chisato this year, I think, is quite important, as it highlights one of the most compelling voice acting performances of the year for Chika Ansai. And as a jury, we really felt that she absolutely nailed her performance, but that was really the most of the meat of the character, and that there wasn't really a lot that we could relate to that wasn't in the regions of contrived story developments, or story developments that didn't necessarily get explored as much as they should have.
In general, do you feel like this was a particularly challenging year or competitive year? Where all these is this the case where this list could be like 10 different iterations, or is it mostly accurate? Well, I don't know what that means. Do you think that this list, how to phrase this? How competitive was this year for you? And for the jury?
For me, I don't think it was that competitive, honestly. There are very few characters which I felt were strongly them, and that weren't really subject to developments in the story. And so we can see that with our winners here, with both Yang Wen Lee and with Mob. But that's really the extent to which I feel we got, is these really strong characters who know who they are. And not a lot of shows put a focus on that. And the list we have here were those characters that did that.
Ember, what do you look for in a dramatic character, and do you think that's properly represented in this list?
I guess in general, yeah, something along those lines. I'm looking for a character with a concrete, not even concretely defined, but just a very strong arc that they go through in order to define whatever struggle it is that they're going through, and a solution perhaps to that struggle, and maybe also just how perhaps they represent the main themes or message of the work, like how they relate to what the show is trying to say, I guess, in a certain way, and how best they represent the ideas of the show. So on top of just like general ideas, like what am I trying, just like general, I guess, charisma in a sense, and just being captivating characters in a sense. Yeah.
Likability, like someone you want to watch.
Yeah, that.
Yeah, I'm actually just curious, like, because I haven't seen Ranking of Kings yet. How is Boji? Boji?
I'd say the first half, he has a really strong arc, and then it comes back again at the very end. It's just like that. The front, like 2/3 of the second core is not a lot for him particularly. So I'm not sure if you guys divide stuff core wise since that was split over the year. So
It's just
No,
whatever
we
that's
don't.
yeah, that airs
Okay.
together. But because like I watched like the first episode, and like, just judging from like the beginning, he does seem kind of like your stereotypical like, oh, he's like an underdog, but he's secretly super powerful, kind of like overpowered kind of thing.
Yeah, you're not far off.
Mm,
but I do think
the appeal of Bodji there is that he's um he's just such a captivating personality through the way that he exhibits his kindness and acceptance for the cast as a whole.
oh, okay. I do love that
Yeah.
archetype.
and I think also he's like is I'm sorry, but trying to find the right term. He's
No, you're
deaf
fine.
and mute, I believe. So
Yeah.
there's
Yes.
definitely that aspect of like it's a very positive portrayal of a disability. I
Like,
would
do
say.
they actually like? Because the first thing that comes to mind is oh my god, how could I forget her name? I'm so embarrassed. Earthbender from Avatar.
Oh, Toph.
Toph, because Toph, I remember they portrayed her disability in like a great way. They even did jokes, but the jokes were tasteful and made sense. Do they actually like is this deaf and muteness actually like a thing that they touch on like quite a bit or?
Significantly, yes. Like there's
Hmm.
actually like several characters in the show that use sign language to communicate with him.
Oh, that's pretty great. I'll have to pick it back
Yeah,
up.
so I do have quite a close understanding of the disabled community. I have a family member who's deaf herself, but works in a position of advocacy and assistance. So the way that the show portrays Bodji's independence is refreshing for one, because there are some other shows that I've watched that don't necessarily treat it with the respect that the characters often deserve. And Osama ranking for the most part is positive in that regards, but again, for our discussions, the jury found that in the back half, where Boji's friend Kage particularly basically becomes a parrot for what he's saying instead of allowing his own agency, because Boji has his own ways of communicating as well, that people can understand. But Kage basically takes that from him and removes a significant portion of agency in his character that is unique to him.
You know, I didn't realize that until you said it, but yeah, you're kind of spot on with that. I have a lot of gripes with the second half of Ranking of Kings in general, but yeah, that's definitely a bit of a sticking point, I guess, for his character.
I feel like that makes sense though, no? Because I mean, again, someone who's only seen one episode, but Kage, he comes across as this kind of like opportunistic, like kind of using him for his own gains, right? So I think it would make sense that he would kind of usurp his autonomy for his own personal. Although at the same time, I've heard people say good things about Kage, like he's like like
I'd say
secretly-
he's like that for the first couple episodes, maybe, but I'd say he very quickly just becomes
Like a
on
mentor
Boji's
figure?
side,
I see. Okay.
like a good friend character.
All right. Well, I mean, I think that's a great place to leave off on. Thank you so much for joining me, you guys.
Thank you for having me on again.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
you're welcome.
We've been talking to Ember and Storm. Ember is Ember Reviews. He's done some things for Anime News Network, and he recently completed the monumental task of 12 Days of Anime, which is a video a day for 12 days, right around Christmas time. So I implore you to go check that out, and I'll see you next time.